Hello and welcome to the last video instructions for Unit 3. For this particular unit, we have covered various chapters, and this Module 12 will finish with Chapter 10. The focus of Chapter 10 is aggression. Now, before I speak to you about all of the interesting research and findings and implications of aggression, I would like to remind you about the work that you will be doing in Canvas. For this particular module, you will be completing your Module 12 discussion board on aggression. You will also be taking a Module 12 quiz. The last assignment for this module and the unit is the Unit 3 exam. Remember that the Unit 3 exam is a timed multiple choice exam. Please check into Canvas for the exam due date. Also, I want to remind you to go back and review the key concepts from the chapters that make up Unit 3. You should also be reviewing the PowerPoint slides associated with each of the chapters in Unit 3. And don't forget to take note of any errors or central concepts that you saw on each of your module quizzes in Unit 3. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the content that we see in the chapter on aggression. The first thing I think is really interesting is that we need to define aggression. And aggression is oftentimes embedded within the social situation. So you might automatically assume, okay, punching somebody in the face is obviously an aggressive act. We would call that potentially a physical act of aggression. Now, here's the issue. Some people voluntarily engage in behavior that involves either receiving or giving punches to the face. So although we could say maybe boxing or ultimate fighting could be considered an aggressive sport, we are not necessarily looking at that behavior as negative within the context of the sport because that's what you're supposed to do. Now, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with people endorsing those types of sports. I'm just saying that aggressive behavior needs to be understood in the particular social situation in which it is displayed. Take for an example, injury. If we say you injure another person, then is that considered aggressive behavior? Now we have the medical professionals who are injuring people in efforts to conduct surgery or improve people's general well-being. You attend a dentist appointment where you're injured for days after, potentially, if you have to have some kind of dental procedure. Does that mean that your dentist was behaving in an aggressive way, or they were doing their job of removing some kind of infection that was deeply embedded within your mouth? Okay. Aside from just making sure we understand when a behavior is considered aggressive or not necessarily aggressive, are the influences on what contribute to aggressive behavior in humans and other primates. There's a link between aggressive behavior and hormones. In particular, research finds that humans with higher levels of testosterone tend to exhibit more aggressive behavior. We also look at activation of specific areas of the brain. So here we're looking at the physiological component of aggressive behavior, and that's important. We see that those people who are willing to engage in psychopathic types of behavior, like murder, assault, they tend to have different levels of functioning in the prefrontal cortex. Remember, that's where we have the seat of our morality. Lastly, I'd like you to think about how we can socialize people to become more aggressive. As a matter of fact, the United States is considered one of the most aggressive countries in the world. And this particular century we're living in, the 20th century, has been found to be the most aggressive of all of our experiences as a species. So where does all that aggressive behavior come from? Well, some social psychologists argue that it's through a culture of aggressiveness. And we saw Albert Bandura back during the development of social learning theory demonstrating that children who had been exposed to aggressive behavior and saw that behavior rewarded were more likely to be aggressive themselves. There's also current day implications of physical punishment on children. Now, whether you agree with physically punishing children or not, the research demonstrates that children who are exposed to corporal punishment, meaning spanking, are more likely to be physically aggressive with their peers and their spouse later in life. Additionally, we find children who have been exposed to domestic violence to more likely use aggressive behavior in terms of gaining power over peers and later partners. So understanding aggressiveness is really a complicated factor that includes the idea of the physiology of what's going on with the brain and the hormones, as well as the cultural influences in rewarding or modeling aggressive behavior. I always find it very interesting to look at the real world implications of psychology, and I think that the chapter on aggressiveness gives you many opportunities to do that. Okay, I will see you back in the video instructions for Unit 4.